Welcome to NFL Daily's top 25 players of the last 25 years. Yes, this is the first episode. It's going to be a 6-part series that I'm really excited about, and there is no one I would rather start the series with than my friend Mina of ESPN. This is a big responsibility, Mina, taking the first episode.
Hello, I'm excited to do this. The players that are in this bunch are great. This is a great group. I mean, they're all great. That's the general premise of this entire thing. But they're really fun players to talk about. So I'm particularly excited to be 25 through 21.
Yeah, a couple things I noticed putting the list together. It's backloaded, like the current players are more towards the back. Don't blame Mina or any of the future guests that are coming on the show. It is my list, but they're coming on to give their impressions. And we have a lot of great guests. Kevin Harlan is going to be on the show coming up. Ooh. Your buddy Nate Tice, Brian Baldinger, Steve Wyche. It's going to be really great. Just a couple little ground rules, though, for the listeners out there if they're curious. It was more about sustained greatness over like a 3 to 5 year period was like where I started. Like, you're not going to be on this list if you only had 1 or 2 great years. That's almost a prerequisite. But it wasn't about longevity to me. It was like, who was the very best? And maybe longevity is a little bit of a tiebreaker. Do you think that's like a fair way to do it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we're talking about, especially when you're talking about top 25.
It's tough, man.
Yeah, you're going to have to make some really difficult cuts. And you're going to have to set guidelines, I think, around like, it's kind of like when we do general debates over like who's the greatest of all time. You have to take longevity into account. You can't just be like a guy at his peak. I actually think the player you're starting with is a great.
He really is.
He really is perfect fodder for this exact question and this exact debate, because there's another player who he's constantly compared to, who I think is probably also on your list. And by starting with this player, you're drawing a line in the sand, really, and you're kind of. It's a take, honestly.
It absolutely is, which means we should just get to it.
Sorry.
But yes, he's on one side of the equation. You're absolutely right. You're going to find out in a second. On the other side, for instance, is maybe a guy like Nnamdi Asomugha or something. And not that he was close to making this list at all, but for a 3 to 4 year period, he was one of the coldest cornerbacks of the last 25 years. Like, obviously, he's not going to make it because that's too short of an absolute peak. But this list is full of guys who had crazy high peaks. Larry Fitzgerald is not on this list, for instance. I don't want to spoil too much, but he's a guy, when you look at it, not that he was a compiler, but a 1 first-time All-Pro or first-team All-Pro, like 2 second teams. His highs weren't quite as high. Let's just get the little list. Let's go to number 25.
Number 25, Travis Kelce.
Mahomes gets the shotgun snap. Pumps, throws for the end zone to Kelce, adjusting, makes the catch, touchdown! Travis Kelce with a touchdown in the back right corner of the end zone. Kansas City wins it 42-36 in overtime.
Patrick Mahomes back, gonna throw middle. Travis Kelce.
This dude's taken over and been dominant in the playoffs. When Mahomes throws to him, they have a 140 quarterback rating. I mean, this is Montana Rice territory.
I don't care what people call us. I know I'm back-to-back and I won 3 in whatever years. Y'all can call us a dynasty. You can call us whatever you guys want. I know what we got is something more special than really what you see in the NFL. It's because the guys in this locker room and the head coach.
It has been a wild journey we have been on with Travis Kelce. Yeah, I remember when he slips in the draft because of tests and stuff and underrated and comes out. He was older when he came out, 24 years old. He didn't have his first 1,000-yard season till he was 27 years old. And yet he is one of the most famous, certainly, and one of the defining players. I mean, you started this whole thing already saying I'm making a take. What do you think that take is, putting him at 25?
Well, I guess that take depends. I'm making an assumption, which is that Rob Gronkowski comes later.
Yeah, you're right.
In this list.
You're right.
Okay, so that's the take, right? Because this is the debate, and it's a debate, the debate between Gronkowski and Kelce, and I think is a really good debate, and I think it's not one that's like there's an obviously glaring right answer. I think you can argue either side. It's about longevity. It's about dominance. It's about peaks. It's about postseason accomplishments. It's also about the nature of this particular position. I think that's the most important thing is when you're talking about who's better, who is greater, who is more dominant, you're also talking about, well, what are we expecting out of the tight end position?
Absolutely. And yeah, his blocking obviously is not nearly what Rob Gronkowski's is, but I don't want to be comparing those two the whole time because at first he wasn't even on my list. And then I started thinking about
Kelce.
Yeah, he was. Well, because I'm thinking about absolute dominance, who are the best, but it's crazy the Hall of Famers that are not making this list. I mean, there are a lot of them. It's a tough list. But 4 first team All Pros, 3 seconds. He's on the all 2010s team. For the Hall of Fame that they put out. He has the numbers like most yards, most playoff touchdowns now, like 3rd in receiving yards among tight ends. So the numbers are all there in terms of counting stats. And I just think his peak wasn't like as high as some of the guys higher on this list, but it is ridiculous, Mina, how many defining moments he's had. And it's because he's been in the playoffs so long, but it's because he finished those games. That catch you heard to start it was the divisional round, maybe the best game of this decade that he finishes in the overtime against Buffalo. He's had like so many walk-offs, including against the Chargers. We might hear that one a little later. Like him beating Kyle Hamilton in the AFC Championship just a couple of years ago. The walk, like he's had so many absolute big moments, and he's just been incredibly consistent, and he had to make this list. I talked to our friend Nick Wright, and because I was thinking about Tony Gonzalez, because his All-Pros and his numbers are just outrageous. But I think at his peak, Kelce was ultimately better, and obviously he deserves to be here.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on Travis Kelce. First of all, it's fun. I think because of the comparison to Gronk and because of who he is at this point in his career, we forget he was an okay blocker. He was never as dominant as Gronk, and that is a huge part of the argument for Gronk if one wants to make that argument. But he wasn't bad. I want to throw that out there.
Fair.
He still isn't actually that bad. He just gets used differently, and a lot of the way he gets used has to do with the fact that he has not been surrounded by world beaters outside of Tyreek Hill. I think that also bears mentioning. This offense has been run through Travis Kelce at so many points in so many big games, and certainly since Tyreek Hill left since then. And that's not something you see very often. A lot of his usage is because of that. It's born out of necessity. I would also argue, and this is something I would say is a little bit, is if you were to make a case for him over Gronk, he, to me, Greg, is the single best zone coverage beater maybe of our lifetime. Maybe that's a little bit too rich when you think about some of the receivers, but certainly amongst tight ends.
No question amongst tight ends, and you're right. I would have to think about that list, and that's why he was a tough one for me of where to put him. Like, is he high enough? He's one of only 2 tight ends on this list. I don't mind spoiling that. Like, that is his trademark, and you saying how his usage went up. Like, his best season was 2020, that cursed season with no crowds or anything, that he was just going crazy. He actually got a few Offensive Player of the Year votes. That was one metric. Like, was he ever at the super top where he's winning those sorts of awards? Not so much, but that year, 1,400 yards, like over 100 catches, and just totally dominant. And to me, he's had a better career than Antonio Gates. He's the key player other than Patrick Mahomes in the best dynasty that we've seen other than the Patriots dynasty, not just the last 25 years, but one of them in the history of the NFL. And the thing that's crazy that you pointed out, Mina, is he's actually gotten better as he's lost juice. One of the fun things I've gotten to do with this exercise, I just go back, watch some old tape or watch some old highlights, and he's ripping off 80-yard screen passes in 2017, 2018, and you're like, oh yeah, Travis Kelce used to have so much juice. And yet, because he has a ridiculous mind meld, maybe the best since Montana to Jerry Rice is Mahomes to Kelce, he's actually gotten better as he's gotten older.
I do like that, like, you can't really punish either of them for the quarterback because they both played with, like, the 2 greatest quarterbacks
right.
of all time. So, yeah, it's not like, well, Travis Kelce got to play with Patrick Mahomes. I swear to God, I'm not going to only talk about Travis Kelce through the lens of Robert Gronkowski, but Gronk got to play with. But I think right now he is in that phase, the one last job phase of his career, where all they need is for him to be big in huge moments in certain games, the same way that Gronk was in the infamous Rams Super Bowl victory on that one last drive. I think with Kelce, like I absolutely think he belongs on this list.
Yes, he
I'll
does.
start there because it's just like he really marries all of it: longevity, peaks, playoff accomplishments, big games,
random reality shows.
That's the other thing is like watching those clips, like because he's played for so long at this point and his persona has evolved so much. It's kind of like his girlfriend's eras. Like we do have Travis Kelce's eras. That, by the way, is all I know about Taylor Swift. I've reached the limits of the Taylor Swift jokes that I can make. But like there have been points in his career where he's been used in different ways, where he's played different roles in that offense, where he has sounded different when he talks. And it's like to me, like you really can't tell the story of the NFL over the last 10 years without him. Spectacular football player.
That it was part of my reasoning, not only that he was on, but a lot of these guys were going to be on. Who were the most painful to leave off? When I had him off first, I was like, oh, that's too painful. And Chiefs fans are going to want to hear this, but there were a lot of like Chiefs that were right. I thought about Chris Jones. I thought about Tony Gonzalez. They were among the first people to be left off this list. And I was like, it would be too painful to leave Kelce, who, yes, not only entertained millions, including the namesake of this studio, Chris Wesseling and Lakeisha Wesseling, were hardcore fans of catching Kelce at the time. The only two people I know that were watching every single episode. But yes, like authored so many moments that I can remember. Let's actually look back, because one thing I found looking through like his greatest plays and his greatest games, so many of them came against the Chargers. It's just outrageous that I just want to play one of them.
Hill, number 3 on the all-time Chiefs touchdown catch list with 1 tonight. Now just 1 catch shy of Otis Taylor. Here is Kelce. Still going. Still going. Kelce. Good night. Touchdown. Chiefs win it.
The thing I remembered more, not that I should have, but he has so many good after the catch plays where he just puts that foot in the dirt and gets everyone to go one way, and you don't think of him like that. And half of them were against the Chargers. I mean, he has 2 game-winning touchdowns against the Chargers. He has a 190-yard game against the Chargers. I believe that was part of that. Like so many of them was just like breaking the rest of the AFC's hearts, especially the Chargers.
It's funny because I feel like Derwin James on the Chargers has been thought of as one of the dudes you can count on to try to handle Travis Kelce. I think that's the other thing that's so unique about him. Whenever we've talked about the Chiefs over the last few years, is certainly during the Tyreek Hill era, it was a lot about how you handle that level of speed, and it was game tilting. But I know as an analyst, every time I've talked about this team and playing them and the defenses, it always starts with, okay, who's on Kelce? What is your game plan? What is your approach to him? Are you comfortable playing zone coverage? The question you ask always about the Chiefs, right? Like, do you have the capability to man up this team? And if you do, who's on Kelce? Like, I think that's when I think about like great players and whether or not they qualify for a list like this, from my, not to be solipsistic perspective, I think through, okay, when I'm thinking about this team and their games, is this the first person I think of? How do we stop them? And you could make that same argument for Chris Jones, by the way, who I do think was probably a tough cut.
He was an extremely tough cut. And like I said, there's a lot of Hall of Famers not on this list. So it's tough to make those cuts, but I'm glad Kelce is on. I'm also glad I have our next guy.
Number 24, Terrell Owens.
That spends a third less.
Well, it's only 1 game so far. Terrell Owens down the sideline, getting the first down and continuing, makes a move back inside. Owens with the big run all the way into the end zone for the 49er touchdown. Another 75-yard play. This time, Terrell Owens doing it after the catch.
3rd and goal. Garcia off the play fake, rolling right, has the touchdown. Terrell Owens. Where's he going?
Right to the center of the stadium.
Right to the Dallas Cowboys logo. Garcia to Owens, touchdown. Owens again heading for midfield. There he goes.
There's going to be a penalty on George T because he's going to clock him. So Owens was going to show him up again, and Teague just said, the heck with it. This game's over anyway. I'm just going to take a cheap shot at him.
We are wrapping, that little celebration of Terrell Owens with him sleeping on the football. He could make this list just off the celebrations, you kind of forget how many of them were so iconic. You got the popcorn, eating the popcorn. You have the Sharpie signing the ball. You have
the Seahawks.
You have the pom-poms grabbing and doing the pom-pom dance. You have him, of course, doing holding his arms up to the sky at the old Texas Stadium. It's just amazing. And 5 first-team All-Pros, kind of what you imagine, Mina, when you think of, at least back in the day, there's not as many of these guys, of like, what would you want your number one receiver to look like? 6'3", 225 pounds, and just fast as hell.
I went back and watched. So I went down a rabbit hole of watching T.O. highlights when I saw he was on your list. And one of the highlights was just every catch he made against the Chicago Bears in the record-breaking game. That I think was Brandon Marshall broke that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 20 catches, yeah.
And it's a great mix of just, slants and hitches, but then also a couple deep balls as well. And you really get a full sense of like his unbelievable skill set, which really was, he was good at a lot of things, but at that size, the speed, the breakaway speed, first of all, he was really physical, really strong, good contested catch guy. Some of his most famous catches are like that. But then like the breakaway speed and movement abilities he had at his size were so rare. It's like you put it. I'm sure Calvin Johnson's going to come later, but it does feel like he was like built in a lab to be a true X.
Yeah, a little different, like better after the catch even than Calvin Johnson, but still had
fast.
Like the mobility. And I know he had some drops certainly along the way and wasn't like as great a separator, say, as Antonio Brown, who was a tough cut from this list ultimately, because I just on the field watching him, he was among the very best I ever saw. But he's a guy who, till the end of his career, was just a big play machine. He averaged 14.8 yards per catch for his whole career. That like never fell off. He's third all time in receiving yards. He was on the all-decade team. He was timed very well for this list. His breakout season, and that was part of it. I did not consider any 1990s seasons. So even if you started in the 90s, like a Randy Moss, for instance, that wasn't part of the equation. And his breakout season, T.O., was 2005 first-team All-Pros. And, man, he didn't have like a ton of playoff moments. He had the catch too, certainly with the 49ers when he was young in his career. But you remember that performance he had against the Eagles, where Belichick has said many times how he assumed T.O. is not going to be in that game or not going to look like T.O. because he's coming off of a broken leg, and he goes 9 for 122 and almost kind of carries them to a Super Bowl win all by himself while he was a member of the Eagles.
Was the finger game before? That was after that, right? When he had the plate in his finger and he came back and played.
Right.
I mean, that's the other thing we got to talk about with him. Yeah, is the unbelievable toughness, which, and that's the other thing about him. Like, just like I talk about him being like the perfect wide receiver, lab built wide receiver. The personality is like, when people think about wide receivers, better or worse. And I say for better or worse because, was he always the best teammate? No. Did he rub you the wrong way? Sure. But holy smokes, this dude was tough and was a competitor. I mean, like some of like the injuries that he overcame to play, I feel like maybe more so than he has some of the most iconic coming off an injury games of any player in NFL history. And it is funny to me that like he contained multitudes in that way, right? Like we think of this like diva personality, but then he was tough as nails. I don't know. He was just kind of an interesting mix of contradictions.
Yes. Let's listen just to a little cut up we have of some T.O. trash talk.
I know you don't want me to shine, but I'm going to shine anyway because I love me some me. Believe it. They still don't hate me, bro. They all hate me. They hate to love me. They can hate me all y'all want to, but you can't stop.
He's an all-time NFL Films sound effects guy, like an all-time NFL mic'd up guy. There's a clip on YouTube from NFL Films, which is 13 minutes of him on mic'd up, and it's so good. And one thing you do get from it is you're reminded, like, he was a team captain more than a few times in his career. He was known as, like, one of the, if not the hardest workers on his team. He learned literally from Jerry Rice, and he talks about that. Not only about how to work, but how to look good on the field. He talks about that a lot. And you just kind of think about him running over all these guys and running past them. And it's just like, that's what you want on your team. And yes, it ended up sour at the end in a few places, in Dallas and San Francisco. Like when it went bad, it went bad. But the vast majority of those years, especially the first couple years in each spot, even into Cincinnati at the end of his career when he's with Ochocinco, he's still putting up 1,000 yards. Like, he gave you everything he had. And so that was why I didn't want to knock him too badly for all that.
Well, speaking of, I have to bet we're on an NFL podcast, but I got to bring this up. He's not in the NFL 100. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
He was not. So the NFL did the 100 greatest players of all time. I think they did it a few years ago, 5 years ago. And let's see, let me find the headline. He called it despicable that he was left off. And like, I'm on his side. Come on, dude. He's third all time in receiving yards, touchdown catches, top 10. And it's not just he's not just a compiler, dominant seasons, 100-yard games. It's insane that he wasn't on that list. I'm just going to say it. It's crazy.
Receiver's the toughest position. So I think making this list, okay, when you're just thinking about the last 25 years in no particular order, Julio Jones, like, is he, like, his peak was just absolutely outrageous. Antonio Brown, I used to get into an argument that at his very peak, I don't know if anyone was any better. These are guys that are not on the list. Larry Fitzgerald, like I mentioned, who's just stacked up numbers, like, not on the list. It was very hard to separate wide receivers, but ultimately, the combination for me of just, he was a little bit uncoverable, because even though he had those drops at times, he was such a good contested catch guy that, like, even if you could cover him, Revis had some good battles with him later in his career. Even if you could cover him, like, it didn't really matter if he was playing his best.
The catch, too, being the perfect example of that. I remember growing up when I first got access to, like, YouTube, just watching that over and over and trying to, like, understand it, how it happened, right? Because it just doesn't, you're just like, wait, the ball, like, how is this getting through, and how is he winning for it? And it was just remarkable. I was asked, just one quick aside, while I was watching highlights, I was texting a little bit with, you mentioned Nate Tice and Danny, about who is the closest to him in this current generation, and the consensus was AJ Brown is the player who's most similar to T.O., which I think is accurate.
I think that's right, especially this version of A.J. Brown, like where he is right now, where we just did a receivers episode and we had him third overall because I think he's such a complete receiver. I think T.O. also, like, warmed up to that spot too, as you mentioned, like the catch too, that was his big breakout in San Francisco. Like, it's funny hearing them talk about him early in his career. Like, he didn't speak. He was very afraid to talk to the media. It was like this shy guy until he wasn't. But Marvin Harrison was another guy. Tyreek Hill was another guy that got cut off this list. Marvin Harrison somewhat got cut off from the 90, 2000 thing, but it's crazy how hard it was to make it. So it just shows you what kind of career T.O. had. Let's take a quick break, and we will be back with the next guy on the list. Back on NFL Daily, best 25 players of the last 25 years. And as we go through some of these players, I will be mentioning who didn't get off the list. I almost feel bad not saying it. It's like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. They are building up that resume, but they're getting cut off basically because they haven't been in the NFL long enough, unlike our next guy.
Number 23, T.J. Watt.
60 yards of offense for the Falcons since halftime, and Cousins is sacked. Guess who? T.J. Watt putting an exclamation on this one.
Big rush. He's hit. T.J. Watt has the sack. Unbelievable. T.J. Watt comes around and makes the sack.
Favorite pass rusher to watch? I had to say T.J.
What? Shoestring sack from the master himself.
T.J. Watt continues to run roughshod.
Newton gets hit. Ball is out. Watson in trouble. There he is. T.J. Watt. He is now the Steelers franchise all-time leader in that category.
The single most surprising player to make this list for me, in terms of I did not expect to be putting him on when I started the list. He was not even that close until I really started thinking about the resume. Defensive Player of the Year, top 4 in the voting, 4 straight years, the last 4 years, 4 All-Pros. The most sacks since he's entered the league, the most forced fumbles by far since he's entered the league, the most tackles for loss since he's entered the league, the most sacks in his first 8 seasons other than Reggie White and DeMarcus Ware. Single season sack record, led the league in sacks 3 times. And I just thought about, like, what are we talking about here? I'm talking about players at the very top of their game, even though I feel a little lower than consensus on TJ Watt. In general, I realize, like, not only is he a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he deserves to make this list. What do you think?
Yeah, it kind of sneaks up on you how dominant the numbers are. And we know, whenever we do, like, who are the best 3 pass rushers in the NFL, it's always TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and blank, Micah Parsons right now, right? But I think you don't think of him as, like, historically dominant until you look at what you just described. The idea of that he has led the NFL 3 times in sacks, twice in forced fumbles, that he's reached such insane sack totals. It's kind of one of those things where you really have to take a step back and realize how incredibly dominant he's been, which is, I think, I'll throw something out. Do you feel like maybe not that he's overlooked, but it seems so unbelievable that JJ Watt could have a brother? Right, like that JJ Watt, who his peaks were so high that his brother came in, and you were like, it's JJ Watt's brother. That he became what he came seems so unlikely, Greg. Maybe that plays into it a little bit.
I think so. I mean, you know who agrees with you? The entire NFL. How did this guy go 30th in the draft? Because for so many years, all anyone said about J.J. Watt was like, how did he fall so far in the draft? I know he was like, he's a walk-on, and he had a different sort of career. He was like a late bloomer at Wisconsin, but it's like he's 295 and the biggest, freakiest athlete with like the best motor you've ever seen, and then had a first ballot Hall of Fame season. Obviously, he is going to be on this list coming up. And then the exact same thing happened, Mina, with TJ Watt. Just knowing like what happened with JJ and somehow that it's like in them, we use the phrase like they're built different. Like the Watts apparently really are built different. How did TJ Watt get to 30th and then be this big of a steal for the Steelers of all teams?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, genetics and also just work ethic and technique. I mean, that's the thing about TJ Watt, similar to JJ, but to focus on TJ for a second, just such a complete player. I think that's, if I had to summarize him in one word, it would be complete. He's so good at everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's so good. Obviously, he is very technically refined and fun to watch pass rusher. And that is something he kind of has only gotten better at over time as he's added more to his repertoire. He wins with speed. He wins with power. He wins with speed to power. He's got great inside moves. Like, he's just really, really, really smart. He's seen it all. And then he finishes, which is how you get the high sack totals. But he's also a fantastic run defender.
Mm-hmm.
That matters if we're talking about like who are the greatest of their generation. He's good in coverage. He's had good moments in coverage where he's read the quarterback, and like he's just really, really complete, Greg. And I think if you're able to hit that level, some of it is nurture. Not to say that JJ Watt and TJ Watt's mom is responsible for this, but like clearly these guys love ball and love studying ball, and that has factored into.
They've got that dog in them, and you're always looking for intangibles, and it's tough to really evaluate that. But I really do think like the fact that he was JJ Watt's brother should have gotten him drafted higher because there is clearly something about how you can improve at the NFL level that they have helped to master. And yeah, it is the big plays. It is the knack over and over and over to have game-winning plays. Like once it happens like a few times, you're almost like, is this a little fluky that he's getting all these forced fumbles? Like I said, he leads the NFL in forced fumbles since he entered the league. is it a little fluky that like his best plays keep coming at the end of these games? And it's like at a certain point you have to just accept like, no, that is not fluky. Just thinking a few. He had a game against the Ravens where he called game on Lamar Jackson on a 4th down sack. He had the game last year against the Falcons where he essentially called game against them.
Week 1, right?
Yeah, he essentially called game on our boy Geno Smith in that Sunday night football.
I remember that one well. Yeah.
He has like a 4 sack game. He's just had like when he goes big, he goes so big and at the biggest moments. And I do think that's how you get defined as like one of the greatest of the greats.
Yeah, I feel like anyone on this list has to have taken over a game or taken games, right? Both all of the guys we've talked about thus far, you would put in that category. And with a pass rusher, that's like a really high bar because it doesn't happen that often. And there's probably like 3 or 4 guys in the league right now where you can say I can point to a few times where that's happened. And yeah, certainly it's been TJ Watt.
There's something cool too about that he is like the edge rusher of the Pittsburgh Steelers, that he's continuing that, tradition for that team, but he's the next and the greatest. And the reason why he wasn't high on my list at first is I think I was a little biased towards the players that are in the middle of their prime. I mentioned before that, like Justin Jefferson and Chase just felt like short. If they had 1 or 2 more years, like they really might make it. But seeing, Watt's been in the league by now 8 years, and so I started comparing him. And you compare his resume, and here's some other guys. I'm just curious your thoughts, like a Calais Campbell, for instance, who was all Pro Football Reference, all 2010s team, who had a 2nd place in a Defensive Player of the Year. Jared Allen, who's in the Hall of Fame. Jason Taylor, who was a 2nd team all 2000s, is in the Hall of Fame. But I don't think actually when I looked at it that his highest of highs were as high as TJ Watt. Dwight Freeney was probably my toughest omission, where his peak maybe wasn't quite as long, but he was such a good player. But those guys, like none of them had a Defensive Player of the Year, like top 4 type of run that TJ Watt had.
Yeah, I think you can probably, TJ Watt's been like top 1 to 3 for
4 years.
Yeah, at least.
And some other years as well, where he wasn't that far off.
Yeah, I none of the guys you mentioned I would put over him, so I think that's fair. I am curious now to see how high that other guy who I talked to. Well, yeah, I don't want you to spoil the rest of your list.
It's okay. It's good. It's a good tease for the rest of the list. Speaking of, let's talk about a player that I know you will enjoy discussing.
Number 22, Walter Jones.
Let's run this thing all the way in.
With me, I want you to come in, and try to attack me.
It's an honor to join Steve Largent and Cortez Kennedy. I'm gonna get to rush up the field a lot. Tell me what Walter's doing. Come on, Walt. Mr. Jones, get it crunk, Walt. As the 3rd player to represent the Seahawks franchise.
He's still the best. Walter's still the best.
And the 12th man.
What a great push by that left side of the Seahawks offensive line.
Oh, Walter Jones, Big Walt. He could be even higher on the list, Mina, but I wanted to hear you talk about your Seahawk. I mean, you were very young when Walter Jones was at his peak. And yeah, for our audio listeners, for instance, if you heard that clip, it was DeMarcus Ware asking, tell me where Walter Jones is. So there's like recognized game, a Hall of Fame player just absolutely fearful and worried about what Walter Jones was going to do.
I think I was drafted when I was in maybe 5th or 6th grade.
That's pretty young.
So it wasn't that young. Well, but then I would say he peaked for so long. So it was, my point is that I was in high school when he was great. I was at the beginning of college. He was still, he hit something very rare, although I guess Watt and Kelce, interesting continuity here. 1 player, 1 team. But when you're that great, you're certainly more likely to stay on 1 team unless you're T.O. Where to even begin? I was waiting for the block. It doesn't have a cool nickname, but the 2005 NFC Championship game.
Talk about
block.
it. Play it. We got it, but you can talk over it. So,
pull it up.
So tell us about it a little bit. It's against the Panthers, NFC Championship 2005.
I would contend. Yeah, there we go. Oh my God, Mike Rucker, R.I.P. That man had a family. one of the single most dominant run blocks by left tackle in the history of the sport, right there. Just taking him for a ride.
And he said as much too. I saw an interview with him that he did, and that's a play going to the weak side where, the defensive end is on his outside shoulder, so he has to get to the inside and block a 290-pound man, and he does it 25 yards down the field, and it's part of one of the best.
Watch his feet. Sorry to.
No, please go on about what Big Walt meant to you in that play. Oh,
so again, like if you what's so remarkable about this, and maybe this is if we're talking about Walter Jones and what made him great, because he was really good at everything. He's a man that size shouldn't have feet that move that quick, and you can really see that on that play. Like sometimes, when a guy's like blocking, it's just like it's just power, and he's just nasty, and he's just kind of like a snowplow, moving the guy along. That's not what Walter Jones looked like. Like his feet look like a tight end or something out there. It makes no sense. And that was his calling card, Greg. He was so light on his feet and so unbelievably athletic at his size. I think he ran like a 4.6 40 famously. I think he played a little tight end in college, or maybe the beginning of college or something. So he had that background, but it was just very rare and very unusual. And it wasn't even, he was an unbelievable pass protector. He just never seemed to get taken by surprise or rattled. Again, a lot of that had to do with the lightness of his feet. I'm sure you guys have some stats on this. He gave up so few sacks and so little pressure over the course of so many years. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, so it's 5,700 plays in his career, only 23 sacks in that entire time, and 9 holding penalties in that entire time. 4 first-team All-Pros, 2 second teams. He is the only player that was on the Hall of Fames and Pro Football References first team for the all 2000. So I thought that was interesting. He's the only one from this era that did make that NFL 100 list, which did influence me. It was tough to pick him over Orlando Pace. Part of it was the way that Jones's career worked out. You mentioned his longevity. Pace was incredible at the start of his career, like right off the jump in like 97 through 99. And Jones was still peaking late into his career. So all those All-Pros that I mentioned are actually in the 2000s. He actually made it all the way, Mina, to the PFF era. And so these are like the last 3 years of his career. And he was the highest rated tackle in pass protection in those 3 years for PFF. And those are the final 3 years of his career. That's his mid-30s. So I know there's no perfect way to mention or to evaluate offensive line, especially 20 years later. But when you have like the numbers like that, and then you have all of the people that were around at the same time saying it, I found like a handful of players that were like, that's not just the best tackle, that's the best football player alive right now, or that's the best football player I've ever seen. And enough of those, I was just like, well, he has to be on the list, and he could be higher if I wanted it. Who knows with offensive linemen.
Pace was the same draft, right?
He was taken first, and Jones went later.
Right.
Yes,
he was. Well, no, but crazily enough, he was the Seahawks' second pick in that draft because they took Sean Springs fourth, and then they traded up with the Bucks for Walter, which was just insane. And little Seahawks lore, a lot of that had to do with because that was when Paul Allen took over the team. This was before the rookie contract era, and Paul Allen was rich enough to afford 2 first-round rookies, like a weird quirk of NFL history, where he gave the green light to do it. Because that was when, I think right after the sale or something like that.
Great call, because I was wondering, like, I was looking at his contracts and stuff, and it's just like those first round contracts at the time, they were like 7 years long, but they were huge for the time. But you're absolutely right. They tried to trade up with the Jets. They thought they had a deal with the Jets at 6. In the end, the Jets said no, like when they were on the clock. But Bill Parcells got a small assist, apparently said, hey, we were talking trade with the Bucks. I don't think they're going to want to sit there. You should call the Bucks. They call the Bucks, and they make history taking Walter Jones.
The contracts too are another funny part of Walter Jones's career, who was notorious for just not showing up to camp. again, this is all that you learn a lot about NFL contract and CBA history through just reading about Walter Jones. But every year he would just hold out and he would train on his own, pushing like SUVs up and then just show up. Seth Wickersham did a great story about it in ESPN, the magazine, like 20 years ago, by the way. Anyways, I feel like Cortez Kennedy before him maybe was the last great Seahawk, but he really defined Seahawks football for an extraordinarily long amount of time.
Yeah, I loved hearing some old clips I found of like John Madden talking about him, and to be as recognized as he was in like a pre-internet era, essentially, as just that dude, you have to just be that good. And I did want to give a shout out to, his line mate, Steve Hutchinson, who wasn't always there, but once they got him in the trade, that is almost unquestionably the best left side of an offensive line in NFL history. I started covering the NFL for Roto-World in 2003, and I would say that Seahawks offensive line, not that people talk about all-time great offensive lines, but maybe they get forgotten a little bit to me, because to me, they would be right near the top with the Cowboys of the mid 2010s of the best offensive lines, that I've had a privilege to cover, and having Jones and Hutchinson next to each other for a chunk of their primes is pretty crazy.
We've been punished for it with 20 years of bad line play since then.
That's so true. So yeah, shout out to Steve Hutchinson. Did not make the list, but had to get Jones on there. Ravens fans, if you're curious, Jonathan Ogden, only 5 years of his prime were in the 2000s. So we missed a lot of the very best of his career. Some other really great tackles over the years. Lane Johnson did not make it for me. Jason Peters did not make it for me. Tyron Smith, who, man, it's close. He, at his very, very best, it's hard to argue against him, but we can only have so many offensive linemen. We have a handful. We have a few more to go. Let's go to our next guy, and our last guy we'll talk about with you, Mina.
Number 21. Lamar Jackson.
It's a 2nd down and 3. Jackson takes it himself. Look at him dart back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage, and he's got a touchdown. He is Houdini. What a play. 47-yard touchdown run by the magical quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Wow.
He's like Kobe Bryant, how you can't necessarily stop Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's going to get his at some point, and that was a great analogy. Lamar's going to get his at some point, and we know that, and everybody knows that, and everybody watching knows that.
Fires to the end zone, touchdown!
On that touchdown, Minka was back, but he was reading my eyes. So I moved my to the right. I said, all right. Then I had to beat 20.
Lamar Jackson makes a list at 21, 2 MVPs, and a first-team All-Pro in the year 2024, where he didn't win MVP, but probably his best season, had led the yards per carry in terms of the entire NFL for different time. 3rd all-time if you're into quarterback rating, by the way. If you're just one of those old-school people that like quarterback rating and wins. I know wins are not a quarterback stat, Mina, but he's 3rd all-time in winning percentage and quarterback
passer
rating.
rating.
It's yeah,
QBR.
It's funny. Yes, passer rating. It's funny to me that he dominates those old-school traditional stats too. So there's no way to come at him.
The passer rating one is the one that blew my mind this season because he came close to the Rodgers passer rating record, and passer rating, for those who don't know, doesn't take into account quarterback rushing, which is why it's kind of a useless stat, to be honest, because quarterback rushing is such a big part of the modern game. It's also QBR accounts for opponent, whatever, we don't have to get to it. But anyway, point is, the quarterback who coming into this league, I don't want to overplay the Bill Polian thing, but it was questioned by everybody whether or not he could be a pocket passer, not whether to switch positions. Just came close to breaking the passer rating record. I cannot stress enough. Right. And I was as much of a Lamar Jackson fan as anyone in that draft. Dominique and I wrote a long article about him, staking our, planting our flag. I did not think he would be this good. It is unbelievable what he has accomplished, and he's only 28.
Yeah, there's no way to say about really any prospect coming in that he is going to be inner circle all-time great. And that's what he is. And that's what I had to think about with this exercise. Like, I was like, has he played long enough in the NFL? It's been 7 years. Has he done enough to get on this list over some really great quarterbacks? Because I didn't want to make this just like an all quarterbacks list. Initially, I had him on like a little higher. Then I had him completely off. And I settled here and just decided, like, especially of this generation, you know, Mahomes is coming up, spoiler alert. But of this generation, he literally was the best player in the league either 3 times, or if you want to split it this last year, like 2.5 times. And he's the best running quarterback ever. That like goes without saying. Not just that he had the best season of all time in terms of rushing yards, but leading all the NFL, including the running backs in yards per carry 4 times, like to me is so crazy. But what you realize pretty quickly, and I think about that week 1 game actually, in his first full season starting, it was 2018, right? Or 2019, sorry, against Miami. And that game where he is just throwing bombs down the field, and he is so good throwing over the middle of the field. And that is the game where you kind of realize, oh, his legs are going to set up so much with his passing, and he is such a good passer. And that season, you know, his first full season as a starter, he wins the MVP.
Yeah, I think he's also a guy where the stats, as unbelievably impressive as they are, and you know, we just discussed all of them, still don't capture what he does to defenses and what he does on a football field, and the way I would say more than any other player I've watched, including Michael Vick, he has more gravity as a dual threat. And I love watching the Ravens on tape for this reason. I love the way he pulls defenses on a string still. And the opportunities that creates for the run game and other players is just unparalleled. He is also just the most electric, like dynamic runner. You know, I mean, just his style, the fact that he never appears to be moving at full speed is crazy. And then, oh, by the way, he also has, become the most accurate passer in the NFL. Because, you know, I was always a believer in his passing ability and his football IQ and whatnot, but he was not the passer he is now earlier in his career. And that's another thing I really have loved about watching him and about his game. And this is same would apply to Josh Allen. He's gotten so much better, Greg. And he's 28. He's 28.
I mean, he is
both him and Allen, by the way, not only have gotten better, but mentally, I would put like up there with anyone in the league right now.
Right, because when you think about that 2018 season or 2019 season, 2018, by the way, is sort of underrated when he came in and immediately started winning games for them and was like an immediate sensation and helps get them to the playoffs and belonged right away. But he definitely needed to develop, and he did that offseason in terms of his passing. You're right that 2019 season, his running was absolutely setting up his passing, and his passing was better than everyone realized. He led the league in passing touchdowns and QBR, ESPN's QBR that year. But now the way he can manipulate defenders, how he can anticipate, how he can throw over to the middle of the field, you have that part of it. And it's kind of like everyone who ever watched a running quarterback growing up, whether it was Randall Cunningham or Steve Young or even Dante Culpepper, and just thought like, that's so cool. Like if one guy could put it all together, like at the highest level, wouldn't that be the coolest football ever? And that is Lamar Jackson. He's done it. He is that guy.
So you are taking into account playoff accomplishments, putting this list together. How much are you dinging him for the fact that he's never been to a Super Bowl, so he's never won a conference championship game? I imagine, you know, I mean, like Mahomes, you said Mahomes is on the list, so it's not like there's anyone else in this regard. But you know, do you think there are people screaming, how can you put a guy this high? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Do you think that there are people at home saying like, well, he's never even won a conference championship game. How can you put him this high on a top 25 list?
I just think the best way to evaluate a quarterback is over the course of a regular season. And he's done that so many times that it tells me that he will have that playoff success at some point, and that I'm not that worried about it. Like I saw it with Peyton Manning, who's one of the greatest individual success stories of all time. And it took a while for him to actually get it done in the playoffs. And it didn't change really who I think about him. And think of all the times, just because of the order it happened, that like Aaron Rodgers knocked on the door and didn't make it, or Drew Brees after winning that Super Bowl the one time, like it took that long. So I don't want to have to wait till he's 31 or 32 to recognize. Plus he's like, he makes your jaw drop. Let's actually look at one of my favorite Lamar Jackson plays.
Justice Hill is the back. Likely in motion, he bobbles it.
Oh my God, this one.
Scoops it in, vacuums it home. Here comes Hubbard. Oh, he threw him away like a rag doll. And he throws in the end zone. Caught for a touchdown. Caught for a touchdown by Likely. Absolutely amazing. How in the world did he keep it together and then find the open receiver?
I could just do an entire show on Kevin Harlan calls of Lamar Jackson touchdowns. I'm almost regretting not having Harlan on this episode just so I could hear him react to that. But we'll have him on some calls.
I love that not to really nerd out, but Next Gen Stats does the, completion percentage likelihood of throws and whether or not a quarterback succeeded those. He's got to have the most just preposterously low odds of completing passes, touchdowns, deep passes, and just pulling the rabbit out of his hat of any quarterback. I mean, Mahomes, I guess, would be above him.
Yes.
I don't know, though. I mean, they're close. They both have, all the best quarterbacks in the league right now, by the way, can lay odds to that. But Lamar, it feels like he has to lead in this guy moments like that.
That's worth something. Like we're talking about best, we're talking about greatest. To me,
this freaking guy.
This guy, he came to and Josh Allen, it took a little slightly later developing, obviously came out a little later. Like he ushered in this new generation. We were a while between great, truly all-time quarterbacks. It was really like Andrew Luck was this one guy in the middle of this desert that we thought was going to get there and then obviously retired early. But it was between these guys, and we thought maybe that the next great quarterback would look like this, and he does. And I think his arm gets underrated, Mina. You mentioned the crazy plays. One play I watched, watching this, was a 62-yard in the air, air yards, opposite hash throw where he's at the 8 and he hits I think it was Deshaun Jackson of all people in stride. He does have a hose, which you kind of forget about with everything else.
Yeah, he has a really strong arm and he has a really unique arm talent. The game where him and Matthew Stafford just went toe to toe, not this year but the previous year, where they were just launching nukes all over the place. It was one of my favorite football games the last few years. I remember watching that and being like, these guys have a lot in common. Because they both not only have strong arms and they're not only preposterous and have arm arrogance, but they also are doing side arming. Lamar side arms it a lot. He's throwing off of crazy platforms. He's doing really, really special things just with his arm. I just interviewed Darius Slay, and now that he's in the AFC North, I asked him, are you more wary of playing Joe Burrow's Bengals or Lamar Jackson's Ravens? And I thought he would say the Bengals because of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, right? But he was like, no, Lamar. And it wasn't a knock on Burrow, but he just said there's just nothing more frustrating than having to defend two plays in one so often against a quarterback. And that's just what makes him special. It's like he gets an extra play. It's crazy. I mean, what he's able to do.
For the first handful of years, and it was kind of back last year too, I thought the most unstoppable play in the league was when, they did a play action or RPO and he pulls the ball in and he just takes 8 yards to the side. For 4 years, the defense was essentially giving him 7 to 8 yards just running to the sidelines. There were so many runs throughout his career where he never hits the ground. It's just him going out of bounds, him just gliding out of bounds.
Crazy. Yeah. The ability to avoid contact is, knock on wood, is just the most unique runner that I don't know. It's crazy watching him run. It just makes no sense.
You're the best guest ever because you even brought up people yelling at me about the playoff stats. I would have just completely ignored it, which I
Someone's gonna do it.
No, I shouldn't. I shouldn't because
it's take. I'm certainly used to the playoff. Doing the playoffs.
It's a great point. I think the first couple of years he played tight and he was a young player then, but that's also like Mahomes came in and played his very best, like immediately in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, he's had great games in the playoffs, whether it's the divisional round or last year in the championship game, like doing everything he could, needing the drive and making it happen and playing well. So that also really the last 2 years, especially, and there's a couple of year gap there that they weren't in the playoffs and he didn't play 21 and 22. So the last couple of years also is part of the reason why I feel like he's over that hurdle, and I think he has played well in the playoffs. But yes, this is more for the regular season. Sorry to the Josh Allen fans out there. Their guy is not going to be on this list. I mean, I think that's fair, right? It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm sad you have such a bad spot.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to make a comment on this. I think that after Lamar, well, I don't know how many quarterbacks.
There's five more. There's 5 more quarterbacks. That's the thing. Like I was thinking about Lamar, let's say versus a Drew Brees. Drew Brees is going to be on this list, of course.
Yeah.
And when I think about Lamar at his very, very peak and what he's already accomplished, you could argue I think that's as high or higher even than a great player like Drew Brees. So the highs are there. I had to not put our guy Phillip Rivers on. I thought about doing it just to help his Hall of Fame case, but I don't think I have that kind of sway that it would really matter. Brett Favre was an interesting one, by the way, because he won his 3 MVPs in the 90s, and then you realize, like, in the 2000s, he made, like, 2 first-team All-Pros and 4 second teams. Like, he was an incredible player in that decade, even though, like, he was even better the one before. Like, you know, you got your guy Russ. There's a lot of great quarterbacks that could have made this list, Matt Ryan. Like, but you can't make it an all-quarterbacks list. But I did want one of these current guys, at least at the back end.
Yeah, I think you chose the right one, non-Mahomes division.
We're biased, though. I mean, you wrote the article back in the day. Check out Mina Kimes. Thank you so much, Mina. Of course, it's the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny. And then the big time new podcast, Viewer Discretion. I like that she's tackling pop culture with her friend David Dennis.
TV Pod.
Yeah.
Check it out right now we're doing Love Island, so not everybody's watching Love Island, but subscribe, keep your eye on the space even if you aren't. We're going to do more shows. We're going to do Love is Blind again, of course, and we also take recommendations.
Love it. Yeah, I don't need to tell everyone to check out Mina. Our next episode will be the second edition of NFL Daily's 25 players of the last 25 years. We will be joined by NFL Network's national reporter, Steve Wyche. Looking forward to that one.